All right, welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast. We are back here at the Craft Beer Cellar, our kind of home away from home, in beautiful downtown Plymouth for all your craft beer and wine needs. But they also have sake. They have root beer now, apparently. Kombucha, if kombucha is your thing. And if you are a fan of the podcast, you've heard me go on and on endlessly about Plymouth. If you've been to Plymouth around Thanksgiving, you've been to Parade Day. This past Parade Day, I had a blast, great time. I ended up at Second Wind Brewery, where I had a couple beers and met our guest for today, who was there slinging his grub from Fat Boyfriend Bakery. Is that correct? Josh Caldwell.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We actually have two brands. So we have Caldwell Confections, which is our dessert brand, and then Fat Boyfriend Bakery, which is the savory / make myself feel terrible about my weight problem brand. So.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing the pretzels? Because Fat Boyfriend is predominantly pretzels, right?
Definitely, yeah. So, I mean, we do some small batch catering.
He said doo-doo.
We do some small batch catering, but predominantly I'd say our export for Fat Boyfriend would be pretzels. And that started in June of last year.
So you've been into the pretzel business for about a year. We ran into you last night at Mayflower. It was crazy packed.
Yeah.
And even the staff was like, we don't know why it's so busy. Now, I saw you were going to be there at the Parade Day. I had a little sampling of kind of your madness. You had like Thanksgiving pretzel bites, but that was nothing compared to the pepperoni pizza panini pretzel. It was killer. Like, where did you even come up with that idea?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you liked it. Really, the truth of the matter is once you start rolling out and making pretzels. So, like you said, we had started the business in June. So from June to December, my wife and I, we hand make everything. So we rolled out about 17,000 pretzels from June to December.
Yeah.
And being as how we're a mom and pop startup, we lived off of the product we made because we haven't paid ourselves.
Right.
So when you're eating that many pretzels, you tend to hate pretzels after a while.
So you're just trying to find a way to spice it up.
So then we started making, seasonal pretzels, which is that Thanksgiving pretzel. Mm-hmm. And then we started leaning into, the melts and different things because we wanted to really take our pretzel recipe, which is a solid, really robust dough, and then really extrapolate what we could do from a different culinary perspective.
Yeah. So do you make an assortment of sandwiches? Or was that just kind of like a one-off?
Yeah, so we actually launched that literally the week before. We have a whole pad of just stuff we'd love to try out on our pretzels. It's really anything comes down to bandwidth. How much time do we have?
Right.
And then how much time do we have to execute before a pop-up? Which I guess for some context, we have two main revenue streams, being our pop-up model, which is where we've interacted a lot, and then our wholesale model, where we wholesale our pretzels into breweries.
So basically you, even though you're not there, you wholesale the brewery. The brewery sells them for a little markup.
Exactly.
So they can feed their customers.
Exactly. What we saw is, there's a lot of really good... There's a renaissance in the craft beer scene, right?
Yeah.
That's been happening for the last, decade, really. A little bit longer if you talk to some of the older folks in there. But what we found is a lot of the breweries my wife and I love to go to, because that was actually how we started bonding, was going to craft beer tours. Not the actual tours, just touring a pint.
Right.
And what we had found was there's a lot of really good craft beer out there, but there wasn't a lot of good craft snacks to complement those beers.
Yeah.
A lot of these breweries were, serving Doritos or Cheetos, the Eatos family.
Yes.
Which, don't get me wrong, I am
Fritos,
a distant relative of that family tree, and I'll eat those forever. But what struck us is these people put a lot of time and energy into what they're making, right? It's
kind of like getting like a Stradivarius violin and playing like the Spice Girls on it.
Exactly.
Like, if you're going to buy something really well made, you should have something well made to go with it.
And my apologies to Scary Spice. Don't come after us.
I mean, yeah, they can send me a cease and desist. I'd be like, I would frame that shit.
But yeah, that was really the whole genesis of the idea, is we noticed that there was a market gap there. My wife comes from a family of bakers and cooks, and we took her talent, and really she deserves all the credit. I'm the one who gets seen the most because I'm out delivering and talking to people like yourselves. But 100% she deserves all the credit. Every recipe in there is mostly her idea, her execution, and then I'll go in and bake and just help fulfill.
So, were you into baking before, or did that just come from like the relationship and like, oh, someone's got to do it?
Me
so,
personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Oh my God, no, you didn't. You would never want to eat anything I made. Last Valentine's Day, I tried to surprise her by making dinner because as us dedicated spouses are wont to do. And I was just going to make flank steak tacos, right? Really simple, and like it was inedible. Like the steak was overcooked and chewy at the same time somehow. Like it was.
Did she try to like fake it and been like, oh,
so
really
if you've
nice.
ever met my wife, she is not of the kind to put on airs.
Yeah.
Which is one thing I love about her is she'll call you on your shit. Like anybody. Like if you just met her, she'll tell you what's on her mind. Which as a woman she gets called out for a lot,
right?
But no, she did not enjoy that particular meal. I will say that since we've been married, my TV diet has switched to HGTV and Food Network almost predominantly. So I do feel as though I'm getting better at it. Much like how all the Grey's Anatomy I watch makes me ready to be a doctor.
Yeah, I feel like that's a total.
It's a 1-to-1 relation. Right there.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, all the credit goes to her. She has all the culinary skills, and then luckily I've done well enough to where I can go in, make some product, and bake for accounts.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so you have the dessert bakery side of it too. Mm-hmm. Now, is that something that is also featured at craft breweries, or is that more like restaurants or private stuff? Or?
Yeah, so that really was the genesis. That was the start of our company. So we started that in January 22nd of 2018, which is what we had that anniversary party for in January. And that was really just pies, cakes. We were doing some brunches at a distillery up in Everett, Short Path Distillery. And then what we had found a little bit after that is it was small batch. We were doing some nice stuff, but the harder thing is with chocolates and sweets is it's not as intrinsically linked with beer as pretzels.
No,
right?
I mean pretzels and beer kind of go hand in hand.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a hugely symbiotic relationship. So there's definitely a market where like Pie Day in March, we do little miniature pies to accompany a flight with whatever brewery.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So we'll do a pie flight and then we'll have little mini 5-inch pies. So we have like a bacon apple pie. It's got an apple. It's an apple pie with a bacon lattice.
So it's a little sweet, little savory kind of thing.
So that bacon fat will drip into the apples while it cooks. Like that's one of our top sellers. And then obviously the holidays is a big season for that as well.
So now, do you guys have your own commercial kitchen, or do you renting space? Or?
Yeah, so we currently work out of a shared kitchen, which is a whole slew of its own nightmares. We had been really just kind of bootstrapping ourselves, hoping we could raise money sooner or later to build out our own space. But recently there have been some market changes with competition arising that have basically led us to the point where we need to raise money tomorrow. Yeah, and build out our own facility if we're going to stay relevant in the market.
So you mentioned competition. Yeah. Is it other craft snacks? Is it pretzels specifically? I know Fish really let you down last night. You saw him sneaking some pretzels from competitors. So, he's an imperfect person.
No, and if you ask anyone in the beer industry about a different brewery, they'll tell you that they like that brewery, right? So, any industry you work in is super small, and I'm not here to tell you that our product is vastly superior to another product. Everybody is really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. So, our main competitor right now is Wicked Twisted. They're out in Groton. They make a really good concession-style pretzel. Yeah. You can find them kind of all over the map. Now, the new competitor that just came out is positioning themselves as a gourmet pretzel, which is where we've kind of pigeonholed ourselves in the market, positioned ourselves in the market. So that'll be the main competition moving forward.
And so, from a business standpoint, trying to separate yourself from that new competition, where do you start? Do you kind of, double down and focus on the relationships you have? Do you start to kind of, start to reach out to new places? What's the plan?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So immediately, obviously, we battened down the hatches. I made a trip to every single brewery we work with because they had already came after my largest client and poached them. So I needed to make sure that everyone else was shored up. So once we saw that, I started asking them, well, okay, they're going to stay with us. Why are you staying with us? And first and foremost, of course, pretzel quality is up there. So we haven't had issues with our actual product. But secondly is the relationship we've built with them. So right now we're a 2.5 person shop. I have a part-timer who currently works in the kitchen sometimes, but predominantly we're baking overnights. I'm delivering, 900 miles a week in Mass right now, and I touch every one of my accounts at least once or twice a month. So it's having that personal relationship that I think is helpful to us right now, in shoring up those accounts, and then just taking that localization model and growing faster is really going to be how we compete. So the Pretzels is really a small piece of it. Our end goal is we want to be a local snack incubator / aggregator. So if there are other people who operate within the pop-up market, we want to select certain snack items that we think would do well with our distro clients, and then help support other local businesses by distributing their snack products through our umbrella distribution.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's our play in the long run. So
Nice.
Pretzels are our Trojan horse, if you will.
Yeah. And then you kind of help everybody.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
we've been in talks for a while now with an empanadas company to try and release, if you've been to Barrel House, their macanada, we want to take that over for them. Doing things like chips and salsa, because a lot of people are using like the Menina chips and stuff like that. So we want to be able to offer a local varietal of any snack that's currently out there.
Oh, so
for
like
the
when
brewery.
with these relationships you have with breweries, you can go in and not just offer your pretzel. You can be like, oh, hey, also we have this chip and salsa thing. Or,
Exactly, and the value to the
Yeah.
brewery is I know one brewery was telling me he works with 9 different food vendors right now.
Right.
And they've got a lot going on. They're not looking to
So
be a
that's
restaurant.
9 different appointments at
Exactly.
9 different times,
9
with 9 different
bills.
deliveries. Yeah.
So, I mean, if we can, take a lot off of their plate, but B, still highlight and focus on local entrepreneurs and help out other local businesses, that's really the cake for us.
And, this isn't a knock on anyone's quality, but
Sure.
being a place where you're focused on making beer and the best beer you possibly can have, if you have that option to eliminate 9 different accounts and replace it with one, it may not have to be, it has to be quality, but it may not have to be the best part, sometimes it's about simplicity, and I think that's a really
totally.
smart idea.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing is, we want to help focus on locals because, I mean, as much as my wife is a superhero in the fact that how much product she can put out, there's only so much we can do as 2 people. So instead of killing ourselves trying to expand our product lines, we can help focus and shine the spotlight on some smaller businesses.
Right.
And it's mutually symbiotic for everybody.
No, it's a clever idea. So you decide to make pretzels.
Yeah.
I assume you start with a big soft pretzel like you would expect. Is that where the ground floor started? How soon after were you like, all right, we need to do more?
Yeah, so you've only had our 6-ounce pretzels. We originally started with a 12-ounce. It's like 800 calories of just sure pretzel, which is great. But again, the brewery is not looking for an 800 meal.
Right.
I got I have 2 breweries right now that get the full-size 12-ounce pretzels. Otherwise, it's more of a snack size.
Yeah.
So pretty much immediately, when we started pushing out the 12-ounce pretzels, we saw that there was an immediate need for a smaller snack size. And we also were doing prepackaged bites as well, which Night Shift was carrying.
And so, I mean, that's the thing about breweries is they want their customers to eat, because if you eat, you can drink more beer, essentially.
Yeah, so that's actually been an interesting problem for us. So one thing we want to test out is the restaurant vertical, because there are a lot of really cool craft beer bars that we think our pretzels would fit really nicely in for a bar snack, right?
Yep.
But the issue is one, we're a gourmet product. We're still working out of a commissary, so we can't quite get our cost of goods down to a point where we can get into the restaurant vertical, because that's where margins come into play.
Right.
A brewery is not looking to make a typical 20 to 30% food cost, or make that margin on our pretzels at a brewery, because all their margin comes at a beer.
Yeah.
So our pretzel leads to another flight, leads to another beer. That's where they're making all that money.
Right.
So we're trying to realign that cost structure so we can get into some really cool craft beer restaurants as well.
That'd be cool. At what point did you then take that snack-sized pretzel and be like, hey, we can do something else with this, or we can make it into a sandwich, or we can flavor it? I just feel like, do you have a lot of stoner friends? Like, that's what I just feel like. Be like, hey, man.
Stoner friends.
Do you know it'd be awesome?
Pretty much it was stoner us.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. In order to work in this business, you got to be partaking a little bit. But no, there was some high ideas. A couple of our later iterations of flavors, like the caramel apple pie pretzel we're working on right now, definitely was fueled by some marijuana. That's how you can know I'm hip when I call it marijuana.
The marijuana.
The marijuana.
Yeah. And how long would you typically say? Like, so say you have this idea, caramel apple pie pretzel. Was that? No, I feel like I'm missing a word in there.
Yeah, no, it's a caramel apple pie pretzel.
Okay. So you have that idea. Typically, from idea to execution. Now you said your wife is pretty much the. No offense, but the brains of the operation.
Oh, totally. Obviously, if you looked at me, I'm the looks of the operation.
Yeah.
But.
So how long does it take for her to kind of perfect that recipe? Is it pretty quick? Is there a lot of trial and error?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. One depends on the recipe. So the apple pie one in particular was a little bit more difficult because we were trying to make a sweeter version of our savory pretzel.
Yeah.
Right? You know, a pretzel inherently isn't sweet. So typically when you make like a cinnamon sugar pretzel, you cook the pretzel from the base up differently than you do a regular pretzel.
Okay.
It's a butter bath as opposed to our lye bath. But with this particular one, we were keeping our OG and we were adding certain things like dried cinnamon apples in there, and then doing like a caramel sauce on it. So getting the balance right for sweetness for that particular one was important. But I would say normally it's all bandwidth because we're still trying to fulfill orders we have going out while trying to create new products,
things
while trying to bring on new accounts. So it's
trying to be a human being.
Yeah, no, there's no human being left. You know, we don't. We try and give ourselves Sundays off, but even that has become, doing paperwork at home because we have, any place we do a pop-up we need to file a permit for.
Right.
So there's always stuff going on.
It's one of those, I feel like people who are entrepreneurs. Thank you.
The
In
spirit.
That's what I was trying to say. I don't need to talk. I just have a podcast.
Yeah.
Are a different kind of person. Now, were you always that way? Did you and your wife, was she more that way? Did she have to, pull you into the business side of it? Because there can be a lot, especially in a relationship, there can be a lot of, hiccups.
No,
Yeah.
definitely. I think her and I have always been of the mindset that we wanted to do something for ourselves. I don't think we ever thought we would jump into something together immediately right off the bat. We're the people who watch Shark Tank and get really upset. We're how are these people running a successful business? They don't know any other numbers. We could do this.
That is the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Squatty Potty. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I mean, and they're a multi-million-dollar company now. But it's so much different once you actually jump into it, right?
Yeah.
I've been a front of house manager for a couple of restaurants. I ran a couple of restaurants on Newbury Street, so I've been in higher level positions of management. And even then, I didn't quite comprehend the scope of everything you need to do to run a successful business. And I know once you hear that at face value, you're of course, running a business is hard. But I think that was the biggest surprise for us is because this is going to sound 100% like hubris. We consider ourselves very intelligent people.
Yeah.
We thought we could do this really well, and we are doing well. But still, there was definitely a bit of, I'd say once a week we probably have why are we doing this again? Maybe it's time to throw our throw in the towel.
Look at that guy who works a regular job.
Yeah, so it's grass is always greener, right? So I'm man, I really wish I could just go do 9 to 5 and not have to worry about all this. But when I think about it, I get to make pretzels. I get to hang out in breweries and drink beer and talk to people about my company.
Right.
That's a lot of people don't get to live that dream.
And eat pretzels, even though you may not love them anymore.
Yeah, no, it's a labor of tough love. It's a labor of tough love.
But that's a great thing. A great topic is what happens that you're not expecting. I remember friends of ours who have a restaurant down here in town. They said, there's always that rush to get open, and they opened up, and people are starting to come in because it's a new place, and food's coming out, and bills are starting to come in, and they're going to cash the drawers out. I'm shit, we never got cash for the drawers.
Yep.
So, what was that one, oh, that should have been super obvious, and how did I miss that kind of moment?
Oh, my God, how do you narrow it down?
Well, what's the funniest one?
Oh, God, I might need a minute to think on that one. So I'll tell you a story about when we first started the business, kind of the runaround we got. Well, so the pop-up model in general, I think, is really hard for the state to comprehend. So we had a lot of pushback from local municipalities when we were trying to pitch our idea to them in general. So like we had first started out the confections business. We wanted to just sell pies. My wife has a really awesome family crust recipe. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to sell some pies at a brewery that I was the head of sales at for a while.
Family crust, that just made me like a weird spinoff on Family Crest. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. It's your show. Yeah. So we were living in Revere, and we honestly were thinking, hey, we'll just bake out of our kitchen at home. We're just making a couple of pies. So we go there and we apply for the business license to establish our business. They look at everything and they're like, all right, this is fine. They approve our business license. We pay, a couple $100 for that. And then we're like, all right, well, now we need a food permit.
Yep.
So then we go to the same board of Revere, and we're like, all right, because here's our pies, here's what we want to do. We had just met with them yesterday, and they deny our food permit. And I'm like, but you guys knew what we were doing. And they're like, well, we can't give you a food permit at a residential building. I was like, well, why didn't you say that before you spent $500 yesterday to get this license when we were talking to you?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, sorry, find a commercial kitchen you can work out of. So then we find a local VFW. Yeah. And we sign a letter of intent with them, and then everything's all good, and we go back in, and we pay another round of licensing, and they're like, great, now you need a wholesale license. I'm like, but I'm not wholesaling any of my products right now. We're just selling pies directly to the consumer.
Right.
And at this point, the Revere health inspector starts yelling at us, telling us how we're just naive and don't understand how any of this works. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get you to explain to me why I need to spend an extra $400 and have the state come and check me out.
Yeah.
So then at that point, we were like, all right, fuck Revere. I mean, we both live in Revere. We love that area.
Yeah.
But the health commissioner was a tool. I hope he hears this. I'll never get a food permit in Revere ever. So we ended up moving to Malden, and they were much more sympathetic. They had a lot of breweries in Malden, so they knew the pop-up model, and then that kind of started from there. But as far as actual business things that we just didn't even think of, I don't know if I can think of one in particular. I'm sure there are plenty.
Yeah, and it's so funny, unlike how every town has weird little rules and different. You think oh, it's just a law. It's not. You still have to deal with the personality of the person who enforces it and their interpretation. Yeah. I used to own a comic book shop, and we were in East Bridgewater. And I had one of those simple A-frames out front, and we moved from East Bridgewater to West Bridgewater. And that simple move of one town, suddenly, in order to have the A-frame out, I had to pay an extra $100 for a permit. It could only be up for, I think, 5 days at a time, and you're only allowed to do it twice a year. And I'm like, really?
Who thinks of those laws to write them in that way, right?
And it makes no sense. What's the point of having that?
I would say our biggest cost is the local municipality. Because, it's so... You're right. It's variable from city to city. I had an account that I was going to launch in Abington, 10th District Brewery. And I had been working with the brewer over there and the owner, and we had been chatting for a while, and he went to the city of Abington, and we were going to do fully prepackaged bites. So, shelf-stable, ready for retail bites. Yep. And they wanted this man to get a full food permit, Serve Safe certified. He was they were if you wanted to sell Slim Jims out of there, we want you fully permitted for a restaurant. And I was like, what?
That makes no sense.
And of course he's not going to make all that. Right. He's not going to put all that expenditure out just to carry my bites. So we ended up having to drop it. But that just shows you the volatility from city to city.
And you kind of never know where the intent is, because I know a lot of restaurants are kind of upset over the whole brewery trend. With every brewery having a tap room, they see that and go, oh, well, now they're taking the beer sales that I should be getting. And then if they're starting to carry food of any kind.
Yep.
So, I don't know anything about Abington, so I'm making just a grand assumption. But, what if that guy knows people who are in the restaurant business or have family in the restaurant business? He's like, nope, not going to let that happen.
How do you feel about name-dropping particular businesses?
Is this in a positive light or a negative?
This is a slightly negative light.
Sure.
So let's say there's a particular business in East Boston. I was at Down East. It's right on the shipyard there, so you can do your own due diligence, listeners. Yeah. But we were doing a pop-up there, and Down East is one of our clients. They're phenomenal. We're working on a model.
Do they have a tap room there?
So they have a tap room, but they don't do full pours. So basically you come in, they give you chips, and you just get to taste their ciders. Oh, okay. They are in the process of getting their pouring license for April 1.
Because we met them at the Martha's Vineyard Craft Beer Festival. They're some of the most fun people.
Oh, they're awesome.
They are amazing.
They are awesome. I came the day after their holiday party, so I saw like the leftover
major hangovers. I'm sure.
There was one woman who had what they called their hangover hat. She only wears it when she's hungover, just to cover her eyes, and she had her sunglasses on. But they're honestly some of the nicest people, and they've been super supportive to us. We're actually working on a model right now where we're going to build out a mobile bar that houses a kitchen unit, and we're going to be there every Friday and Saturday once they get their tap room open. So we'll have a bit of a live-in model with them. So I'm going to hire someone to run that. But our first pop-up with them, we went in there, and it was, I don't know, a little bit cold out. So my wife had made her family's turkey pot pie.
Okay.
This particular establishment down the road has meat pies.
Okay.
So he calls me, pretends to be a Jamaican meat pie owner, and asks if I have FDA approval to be wholesaling meat pies. And I tell him that I'm on site. I don't need, wholesale approval for that. And then he hangs up. And so I later learned it was the owner of that restaurant.
Like, did he call you on the cell phone?
He called me on my cell phone, pretending to be an owner of a different company who was interested in how I was wholesaling.
Okay.
And then I would later find out it was this gentleman, because then he called.
Was it like a really offensive Jamaican accent?
No. Luckily, he
calls back later with like a really offensive Chinese accent.
No, so then he calls the manager of Down East.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I see you guys are selling pies out of there. This is a slap in the face. Calls the local health department, calls the landlord of the building to pull my permit to try and get me in trouble.
Yeah.
And then tries to get me thrown out of there, all within the span of like my first event there.
Yeah.
And for me, I was really disappointed because there was an article that this particular place is going out of business soon. And my wife and I go there once a week. I love their food. Right. We were going to try and talk to them about taking over their recipe for our model that I was telling you about.
Right.
And then, of course, this happened. And I'm like, maybe not.
And now you're like, fuck that
guy. But he actually reached out to them yesterday to try and take our food spot. And they were like, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Wow. It's... Like, I get it. It's business, and a lot of it can be cutthroat, but sometimes that doesn't get you anywhere. Like, that kind of...
No, and that's not how I like to operate, And like I said, my personal connection with my accounts is one of our strongholds. And I tell them, we operate a family business, and I treat our accounts like family.
Yeah.
So, like, I do take it personally when someone, doesn't follow through, or someone, for lack of a better word, stabs us in the back.
Right.
We are not of the ilk of, the crony capitalism, corporate capitalism model. We're very much... this is a dirty word in today's politics. We're of the socialistic mindset, where we want to help prop up our communities, because that's what craft beer is, right? It's a focus on local, and it's about building up those communities.
Like, it may be a dirty word, but, like, if you really get down to it, all these microbrewers and microscopic brews and, nano brewers, whatever the hell they're calling themselves, they're all like, they're all trying to support the local farms and beekeepers, and it's all it's so much of it is going away from like corporate America, and you can see it. Like I've been in corporate places that are empty. I hear about like kind of bigger ones that are struggling or going out of business, and just saw it with Sears. I mean, like people are kind of getting. Well, I feel like Sears is probably more like an Amazon thing, so that may not track exactly, but I feel like people are more interested in supporting the local made stuff. I'd rather pay a little more for something that's going to taste a little better.
Definitely.
And so when you're working with these breweries, like how do you, like what's your first step? I'm not trying to steal any trade secrets. Like, do you cold call these people? Do you just show up? Is it word of mouth? Does Second Wind talk to Untold and be like, oh, you got to have this guy?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is definitely word of mouth because it's a really close-knit industry. For anyone who's looking to sell into breweries and happens to be listening to this, don't cold call in. They don't have time to answer the phone. It's the same thing with restaurants.
Yeah.
So your best bet is on a Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday. Those are big brew days to go in, introduce yourself. I use Instagram a lot, which makes me feel old because my wife tells me I don't hashtag correctly or enough. But I'll use Instagram and I'll just reach out and I'm like, hey guys, love what you're doing. We make local craft food. I'd love to bring some samples by for you and just see if this would make sense.
Yeah.
I've worked in sales probably close to 15 or 20 years now. And I've never been a brash, boiler room salesman. I like to find, symbiotic relationships. And if it works out, it works. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And if not, we wish you the best.
Right. That's kind of the way I'm looking. Like, this is what we have. And, some people are like, no thanks. And you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
Yeah. There was absolutely no blackmail to get me on this, I will say.
Yeah, we didn't blackmail you.
Not this time.
No. So we're kind of in a similar situation where we're trying to expand more breweries with our beer mug painting. We don't have, like, we can't go in and be like, we don't have that, here, try this kind of thing.
Sure.
So it is a little more cold call, but it is that kind of. Do you feel it's easier now that you've established that you can be like, oh, we were supposed to be at Second Wind till 7 o'clock? And so, perfect example, or not perfect example. Good question. So you were supposed to be at Second Wind tonight till 7. You sold out. Do you think that is? I mean, obviously, financially for you, you'd rather have more to sell.
Sure.
Now, do you think Second Wind looks at that being like, oh, he should have brought more, or like, oh, we got to have him back because he sold out? Do you think that's like a pro or a con in that column?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on context in history. So if I'd been there a bunch of times and I saw it in the first 40 minutes, I'm obviously not learning anything.
Yeah.
So for me in particular, the first 3 times I was at Second Wind, I brought product home. So I adjusted our accounts a little bit to where I sold out this time. So I will tell you, hands down, resource planning is the biggest pain in the ass in this job.
Right.
So it depends.
Because sometimes you just never know.
Yeah. Whenever you go to festivals, they'll give you this really like, oh, we're going to have 12,000 people come.
Yeah.
And then I get 150 pretzels.
And then it rains.
Yeah. So that's one thing I would say is if you're looking to start a food business, whenever they give you a target estimate, cut it in half and then plan for half of that.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you, Village Fest in Everett, we did our first Village Fest last year, and they emailed us out and they're like, we're going to have 16,000 people this year. And I'm like, great, this is awesome. 2 weeks before the event, hey, we're going to have 12,000 people this year. Okay.
Yeah, still. Yeah.
3 days before the event, all right, we're going to have 6,000 people this year. And by that time, we had already spent 40 hours prepping all this product.
Right.
So we took 3, do you know a speed rack in a commercial kitchen?
Yeah.
The big racks that you throw sheet pans on.
Yeah.
So we had 3 of those full of pretzels. I must have left with 2 of them full for that event. Just completely wasted. So like that, trying to get that under your belt, and that'll come with time.
Right.
So once you have historical data, stuff like that. But to answer your question, I think Second Wind, in places like that, understand that it's a hard thing to plan for. And Hans was super pumped. I went up to him and was like, hey, and Hans, we sold out today. And he was like, yes. He was excited. Yeah. But Hans and Kenny have been super supportive of us. They came to our birthday party. They're awesome guys. I think they're one of the best breweries in Plymouth, and I'm glad they're succeeding.
Yeah, they're super great friends of ours.
Apologies to all my other Plymouth accounts. I love you as well.
And that's one of those. That's like one of those like which is your favorite kid kind of things.
Totally.
It's like I love the guys at Second Wind. I love the people at Mayflower.
Yeah.
Indie firm. I don't know them that well. It's not that I don't love them. I just
and Paul's great.
Yeah,
he's the nicest guy. He helps us out with our malt because we use malt in our pretzels.
Oh, nice.
So he helps us because he has that brew supply stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean. That's the great thing about this industry. And my wife and I worked in the industry before we jumped into this. So she was not head of production. She was a production assistant, head of operations and marketing for Short Path Distillery.
Yeah. And
I was head of sales for Bona Brewery before we jumped into this. So we were really acclimated with the ecosystem and economy of the craft beer and craft distillery movements. And they've just been super supportive. It's a really close-knit industry, and that's one of the reasons we love jumping into this, as I'm sure you guys know. Everybody knows everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And which is great for us as long as we have a good reputation.
We went to the Martha's Vineyard Craft Beer Festival, which I mentioned, and we took the ferry out. It was fairly early. We get like 6 steps off of the boat, and we hear someone yell out of a car driving by, "Andy, fish!" I'm like, who the fuck knows us here? And it was Jimmy Sticks from Mayflower, you know? And that's just how it is. It's this great, I'm sure there's bad blood between some breweries, but
sure.
It's just one of those industries where everyone is having fun. They're all like-minded people. They all like to talk about beer. So they get to talk about beer and drink beer.
Yeah.
And like, how can you have a bad time?
And again, like the whole focus across the brewery industry is really about that local focus.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, that's starting to be really prevalent in the market. So I think you'll start seeing a lot more success, which is why you're seeing all these breweries pop up.
Yeah, and they all have these tap rooms, and I feel like you can put anything in a tap room and have huge success. We've been doing the beer mug paintings. We ran some holiday events. I see yoga. I see
yoga's been huge in breweries.
Yeah,
everywhere. Backlash is doing it every Saturday now.
Planting courses.
Plant night.
I don't know what the hell that's about. But it's just like, I want to do this in a brewery. Boom, you get 30 people signed up. So, but what is the real fundamental difference? Because you're not a food truck, you're a pop-up.
Yeah.
Is there a huge difference? Is it fairly similar? Because I know food trucks can have a really hard time because every single time they go to a different town, they have to be inspected by the health inspector of each town. Do you have to go through the same process?
So technically, yes. Okay. Technically, we should be inspected every time. I will say, depending on the city, most of them won't show up.
Yeah.
So we'll go through, we'll pull the permits. I actually, up in Beverly, Joe up there, who's the health inspector, he was our first on-site inspection in a year, outside of big festivals.
Yeah.
So I will say that we probably, there's definitely, it's more lax with pop-ups just because it's still so new. I think the health departments in aggregate across Mass are trying to figure out what to do. And this is something I was talking to him about. I was like, listen, there are 4 other breweries that are going to be in Beverly in totality within the next 6 months.
Really?
You got Old Planters up there. You got Gentilly, you got Channel Marker, and then there's another one right behind Gentilly that's going to be opening up.
We're going to have to plan some beer mug paintings up there. We know people in Beverly.
And so I was talking to Joe. I was like, listen, man, I'd love to be able to do more stuff here, but I can't buy a singular permit for every day, for every brewery, for every event I want to do.
Yeah.
I was like, if I come to you, can we work out a yearly permit? You can come inspect me on whatever events I'm doing, but let me pay one flat fee. And so that's something I'm trying to work out with the individual health inspector. So if that could happen at the state level, that's probably, a couple years down the road, if ever. But I would think that would be really helpful to a lot of small business because that's a huge expenditure for a lot of people.
Yeah, we were talking with, I forget her first name, Joanne maybe, from Food on Mom on the Go? Joanne? Janine? I've research. But she has a food truck, and she started like a little food truck organization. And one of the things that she's trying to do is to set up, festival's not the right term, gathering maybe, where at the beginning of the season the food trucks congregate in one place and all the food inspectors can show up and just go from truck to truck to truck to truck.
Yeah.
And that way you get it all out of the way, and it's not like, as a, from the inspector standpoint too, you have like 30 different trucks wanting to be inspected and you got to make 30 different appointments. And
oh yeah. Well, our wholesale permitting, when we had filled out for that, my wife was talking to the actual inspector, and they have like 3 inspectors on staff. He's like, we're lucky if we can inspect maybe half of everyone once a year. Like, they're super backlogged.
Yeah.
And they can't get to everyone. But I like that idea. Back to your question, the main difference is they need to have the fire department come and look at their...
okay.
That's one of the stipulations for a food truck. Because they have most of them have like propane and stuff.
You're right. They could explode.
Whereas like me, I'm using a convection oven and a panini press to make sandwiches. Yeah. So my footprint is a lot smaller.
Right. So where did the panini idea come from?
Again, it kind of grew out of the fact that we were, 1, sick with pretzels, but 2, it kind of dawned on us that, well, I mean, it's a bread product, but no one views pretzels as a bread product.
Well,
right?
I mean, it was maybe like 3-4 years ago, there was like a whole fad of the pretzel bun.
So yeah, that definitely exists, and luckily, just the way that we roll our pretzels, we try and lean into the Fat Boyfriend brand, so we make them a little bit more bulbousy.
Yeah,
it lends itself to be able to use it in that fashion. Plus, our dough is super versatile, so then we can take it and do certain things with it. So, like, I'm working on a thing right now where I want to take our jalapeno cheddar dough and make it into bakery pan pizza and use it as the crust. So then we could do really individual pizzas to breweries, right? Because, I mean, that's a huge thing right now. I work so many pop-ups and people will bring pizzas in. I could tap that market.
That happened last night.
Yeah. No, that happens at every place. Which, cardinal rule, if you were going to order outside food and there's a food vendor on site, that's totally cool. Don't come ask me for my napkins or my silverware.
Does that really happen?
It happens all the time. And
that is rude.
I know, like, if you're not a business owner, it sounds kind of nitpicky, but, like, you got to understand, I pay for all that stuff.
Right.
And, like, I know it sounds trivial, but, like, to a company that hasn't paid themselves yet,
if you ordered from someone else, they should be...
Exactly. Yeah. I know it sounds trivial, but for all those people out there, don't steal napkins, and make sure to tip at a pop-up. You know, a lot of these people who are running pop-ups are business owners.
Yeah.
But I think the consumer doesn't feel like they need to tip in that scenario because the food is brought to them.
Yeah.
You know, just be wary of that. You know, all these people probably aren't paying themselves yet. They're
they're
trying to make something.
They're a lot smaller. It's not like...
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a lot more that goes into, like, I waited tables forever when I was in college. You know, there's a lot more I do now than I ever did when I waited tables.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just, you know, let me preach to your audience here.
And don't steal napkins.
Tip me more, damn it.
And don't steal napkins.
Yeah.
Go to Friendly's and steal napkins.
Are they still around?
I think
they closed
maybe?
a lot of them.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Yeah.
Well, don't see when you steal napkins, Friendly's closes.
Yeah,
you sons of bitches, and I'm calling you out, Natalie. Friend of mine stole napkins from Friendly's. That's why they closed. She probably won't listen to this, but so now you work with all these different flavors, and coming up with ideas. There has to be some that you've tried, been like, this is going to be awesome, and you try and be like, this is horrible. Was there one major fail that you're like, that's, you know?
No, I think we've been
salmon pretzel just isn't going to work.
Oh my god, I wish. No, we've been pretty lucky. So, and that's one really annoying thing. So we've got a lot of products we would love to put out, right? So like we had a chocolate covered bacon that's really good.
Yep.
But then there's little known things where like anything more than 5% meat, you need a new level of permitting from the FDA.
Yep.
So now not only do I need my local municipality permitting, I need my wholesale permitting, now I need FDA permitting, which entails that I have an FDA inspector on payroll for the year.
Oh, wow.
It also means that I take a 6-month course at Cornell, and I get my food tested at Cornell, right? And that's a huge hurdle for someone like me.
Oh, yeah.
Where I just want to, you know, make my own pickles.
Right.
Right? Like, so I
do know a pickle person if you're looking for pickles. But is there another thing that you haven't had a chance to try yet that you're like planning or?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff. Like, you should see our wish list. There's so many things that we would love to be able to do, whether it be from a pop-up or a wholesale perspective. So, like, our bites, you know Bantam bagels? They were on Shark Tank. They're in all the Starbucks now. They're basically a bagel ball filled with cream cheese.
Okay.
So we want to, similar to that, we want to take our pretzel bites and stuff them with different things. So we could do, like, a chive pretzel bite with a sour cream stuffing.
It's almost like a craft-made combo.
Kinda, yeah. But it would be a little bit softer.
Yeah.
Like I would love to do like a steak and cheese bite ball, you know,
that
stuff
sounds
like
good.
that. Like I think that would be really cool. The workflow would be a nightmare to stuff all those things.
Yeah.
But again, you know, if we can ever build out our own facility, we can, you know, streamline that process.
Do you ever foresee the point where you get a pretzel machine, or is part of like what your goal is to stay hand twisted? Or
Well, so hand twisted is the Wicked Twisted logo.
Yeah.
Which next time when I go to the Worcester Brew Fest, I'm going to sneak in and bring some pretzels and say handmade, not hand twisted. That's my whole goal. But no, so it depends on the market, right? So when we were talking about margins for restaurants, one way I can cut down margins for restaurants is to make machinery that'll do that, which I'll be able to do for that. But for the craft beer industry in particular, it'll be handmade always.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's that level
So you would
kind
of have that different...
We would have, like, basically some product variation just because we need to from a margin perspective.
Right.
But our whole value prop, and the reason I was able to take some of Wicked Twisted's accounts... this is going to play so well. I hope they hear this. One of the reasons I was able to take some of their mainstay accounts,
which they make a fine pretzel.
Totally. Again, like I have no qualms with them. I'm just looking to, you know, pay the mortgage, so to speak. To quote,
of course.
To quote, "Thank you for smoking." Have you seen that movie?
No.
You never saw "Thank You for Smoking" with what's his name? I don't remember his name.
It's Aaron Eckhart, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, Two-Face. Yeah. Okay.
Phenomenal movie. You should watch it. But
I know of it. I've just never had the opportunity to watch.
Top 10.
Okay.
But part of our whole value prop is that we're a craft food that's handmade for a craft industry, right? So if we move away from that, then we start to lose some of our competitive advantage.
Yeah. And now,
sorry to have to make you pipe in fish.
Yeah, that's what he's just there to fill in the things we can't remember. So, how far out do you plan up pop-ups? Is there somewhere people can go to see like where you guys are going to be? Is it kind of like weeks, months out? Like how far out?
So I am booked right now up until about April, and I'm starting to fill out April. So every Friday and Saturday, I'm pretty much booked to April.
Okay.
So you can go to our website. It's www.caldwellbrands.com. We have a page for each of our brands, and we have an event page that you can go to that has all of our pop-ups in it.
And why Fat Boyfriend?
So there are actually studies that show that people in a happy relationship put on weight. Right, so when we first started,
this is true.
I wish I was in a relationship when I started putting on weight, then I'd have an excuse. But so when we had actually started the dessert brand, I think I put on like 40 pounds, like in the first like 3 months, because I was like QA. So she was
like, here, try this, here, try this, here, try this.
Our friend, a couple of friends of ours were getting married, and they worked at the brewery and distillery as well.
Yeah.
So we catered their wedding, and we made all s'mores infused items. So we did like a s'mores cheesecake bar and a s'mores truffle. My wife makes the best chocolate truffles. And so I'm sitting here trying them all, and oh my god, I just ate so many of them. Such a fat ass. Which also is not really conducive to our aforementioned weed talk.
Right.
So that really exacerbates the issue for me. I'll go through like a box of truffles.
I only have 6 today.
So that was a big problem. But basically, studies show that you gain weight when you're in a happy relationship, and we thought it was a funny name.
Yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah.
It's very memorable. I mean, I can't remember who I was talking to. I'm like, the fat husband guy, which was pretty close.
It was close. The worst part of it is so many people will come up to me, and I think I've told you guys this before, is I'll be at a pop-up, and everyone always goes, "You're not that fat." Like, they have to qualify it.
Yeah.
Like, you're pretty fat, but, like, I've seen fat.
You're not the fattest guy I've ever seen.
Come
on.
I can squeeze into a medium shirt once in a while with some butter. Like, I don't know. Give me a break.
That's not that offensive that you said that.
You're not that dumb, Like, oh, cool. All right.
Has there been like one like really silly instance or comment that has come out that's memorable? That a fat comment, not necessarily a fat comment, but like that just made me think. People say dumb shit all the time, basically.
I mean, it'll be self-serving, but people have said some really funny things like about how good our products are.
Yeah.
So like there was one person at Idle Hands when we were there who literally said that they would sleep in a fort of our baked pretzels. They were that good. She wanted to have a pillow of our pretzels, and like random stuff like that. And talking about our chocolate truffles, it's sunshine in my mouth is one thing that I've heard.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think this all might just be the weed. I don't know.
Yeah. It's always funny. Like, I remember we were at this place in Connecticut, which isn't even around anymore, and a buddy of mine said something about, like, the burgers were so good he wanted to sleep with the chef as the waitress is walking by. So, like, 5 minutes later, the chef comes out. He's like, I hear him, like, getting some. Like, what's going on? And it's just... But I think that's kind of part of the fun of it.
It's if you can get that visceral of a reaction, you're doing something right? Yeah.
Well, we loved having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. I hope I wasn't too dreadful.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
And you didn't talk trash about that person specifically, so I only worry because we've had to pull an episode once before. I don't think you'd care though. So people can go to the website that you gave, find them at local breweries. We're not, going to hold it against you that you sold out before we got over there to get some. But, we'll manage.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hit that point that I hit of getting sick of my pretzels sooner or later. But
yeah, but it'll be fun getting there.
Yeah. That's going to be at least 6 months down the road.
And so any parting entrepreneurial advice to our listeners?
Yeah, if you have an idea and want to start something, start something.
That's funny because I feel like most people are like, don't do it.
No, I mean, like, is it going to be hard? Yes. Like, are there going to be difficulties? Yes. But, like, I feel like people are always waiting until the right moment to do something. Like, I'm waiting to the right moment till I can get married. I'm waiting to the right moment to have kids.
There is no such thing.
There is no such thing. We started this business with literally $500. Like, I'll be honest, we're always about 3 weeks away from eviction in my apartment because we haven't paid ourselves.
Yeah.
And, like, that's crazy scary. But at the same time, like, getting to talk to people like yourself, getting to talk to people at the breweries who really like our product, it's really gratifying to see that, like, we're doing something right. So, like, there's never going to be a right time to start something. If you have an idea, go for it.
And what's a better story, being like, oh, my parents are wealthy and I had this bunch of money, so I started this business and I paid a guy to run it mostly.
Yeah.
Or being like, yeah, we're like, you know, we had $7 and our rent was due in 2 days and we had to, like, make 5,000 pretzels in 6 hours. Those are the stories.
We are not above bribing people with pretzels. Yeah. So if anyone's out there looking for tenants that pay in pretzels, hit me up. I got a plethora of that. Yeah. I'm rich in pretzel.
So you mentioned it briefly, and we're just going to jump back to this because I thought of this question earlier and I got sidetracked. Yeah. You made a ton of pretzels for an event.
Yeah.
And not all we're going to sell. I'm assuming the shelf life on pretzels isn't a huge time. Now, do you try to, like, work in a pop-up really quick? Like, how do you handle that so to avoid a giant loss?
Yeah, so, I mean, it depends. So when we got nominated for Best Warm Pretzel by WGBH, we participated in a food fight for them. And we had made 1,000 2-ounce little pretzels.
Yeah.
They told us to prepare 1,000 pretzels. We gave away maybe 200. So I had, like, bags of pretzels. So I literally walked around to every vendor there, and I gave them a bag of pretzels. Yeah. And then I gave, like, 6 bags to the local food shelter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely try and mitigate waste. One good thing is, you're right, the shelf life on our pretzels is not great. But if we leave them out and let them get stale, we can cut them, and then we make them into a French toast bake, and then maybe we'll do a brunch pop-up. So there's a lot of stuff we can do to, like, mitigate our losses. Or we can freeze our pretzels up to 30 days and use them for a melt as opposed to a fresh pretzel. Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely ways we try and to limit, waste or just donate product because,
at least someone's eating it.
Yeah, no need to throw out 600 pretzels.
Right. Well, Josh, it's been a lot of fun, and it's I'm looking at my clock now. It's beer 30, so we have to go.
That is very important. We are scheduled for beer. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, and I'm sure we'll see you at different breweries.
Yes.
And when we have events, we'll try to make sure that we can get Fat Boyfriend there to stuff our faces full of pretzels.
Definitely. And once all the high demand from this podcast comes back, you guys can invite me back.
We are, just so you know, the 280th ranked art-based podcast in Brazil.
Really?
So if you start getting phone calls from Brazil, I mean, I think there's like 284 podcasts, art-based podcasts in Brazil. So we got 4 people beat. But I'm still hanging my hat on that.
Congratulations.
That's a ranking I'm proud of.
I would have brought some Brazilian cheese bread if I knew and really
See, that would have been great. But,
let's end on that.
We're moving on 279. That's our goal. So thanks again, Josh.
No, thank you guys.
Okay, thanks for checking out the podcast. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network. There's the Bar Talk. There's Old Colony Cast. There's, of course, the Inebri-art Podcast. And our latest, Retro Redoctopus, a kind of nerd genre podcast that you can check out now, all available on our website at inebri-art.com. And pretty much available everywhere that podcasts are available, on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all those things. And if you don't see it where you're looking, let us know. We'll try to get onto that as well. And you can also email us at inebri-art@yahoo.com with your questions, complaints, and suggestions. And also, if you could take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, that would be phenomenal. That helps us get more exposure and bring more of these great podcasts to your ears. And thanks again for listening.